Ryan Glover. In this video, I wanted to talk about a topic that's rarely addressed. It's about Christians that are being killed all across the world because of their faith. In the Bible, in Revelations, those who die for the Christian faith are described as martyrs, people who are blessed. When the reign of Christ begins during his millennial reign, Revelations chapter 20, verse 4 specifically mentions the souls of those who had been beheaded for their testimony of Jesus and for the word of God, and who had not worshipped the beast or his image, and had not received his mark on their foreheads or their hands. They are seen as victorious and are given white robes, symbolizing their purity and victory. Revelation chapter 14, verse 13 also declares, "Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord," emphasizing that death is not the end for believers, but rather a transition to be with the Lord. There are many places across the world where Christians are dying. One of those places is Syria, where there's ongoing violence and persecution. Recent reports indicate that attacks have targeted Christian minority groups along with other minorities like the Druze and Alawites. For instance, in July of 2025, Pastor Khalid Mazar and 11 other family members were killed during a government military incursion in Sawada, a region with a mixed population, including Christians. Christians in Syria face threats from multiple sides. Islamist extremist groups such as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and remnants of the Islamic State continue to attack churches, desecrate cemeteries, force dress codes on Christian women, and confiscate property. A recent incident in June 25 involved a suicide bombing at a Greek Orthodox church in Damascus that killed 25 worshipers. This is one of the deadliest attacks on Christians since the Civil War began. The Christian population has drastically decreased since the Civil War started, from about 10% of the population before the war to a much smaller community now, due to killings, forced displacement, and immigration motivated by persecution and security fears. While some Christians found relative stability under the Assad regime, the fall of his government in late 2024 and the rise of Islamist-led forces have increased the dangers they face. Basically, Christians in Syria are indeed being killed and persecuted, and their communities are shrinking due to violent attacks, including massacres, bombings, and enforced restriction by extremist groups and military forces. Christians are also being killed in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, particularly in the eastern regions where Islamist militant groups like the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, operate. The ADF, which is affiliated with the Islamic State group, frequently abducts, kills Christians, and attacks churches, causing widespread terror, insecurity, and displacement. There have been several recent tragic incidents. On February 13th, 2025, militants rounded up 70 Christians in the village of Meba, North Kivu province, took them to a Protestant church in Kasanga, and brutally killed all of them with machetes or hammers. The massacre was attributed to the ADF, and the security situation has left many families unable to bury their dead. On July 27th, 2025, at least 30 people were killed in an attack on a church in Komanda City, Ituri province, by ADF rebels wielding guns and machetes during a prayer vigil. The attack also involved burning homes and businesses, with many missing persons reported. The United Nations described the violence in the region as a bloodbath and is condemning the attacks. Christians in eastern DRC face persecution not only from Islamist militants, but also from other rebel groups like M23, and they experience pressure within families and communities, especially converts from Islam or indigenous religions. The risk to Christians includes abduction, forced conversion, rape, sexual slavery, killings, and displacement. The violence and persecution have escalated recently, making daily life extremely dangerous for Christians in these areas. In summary, Christian communities in Eastern Congo are subject to severe violence and killings, predominantly by militant Islamist groups like the ADF, with affiliation to ISIS, causing a humanitarian and security crisis. Christians in Yemen are being killed and severely persecuted. Reports indicate that in areas controlled by the Houthi group, and extremist Islamist factions such as Al Qaeda and the Islamic State. Christians face extreme dangers, including surveillance, arbitrary detention, torture, and murder. At least one Christian Yemeni was killed for his faith as recently as 2024. Conversion from Islam to Christianity is seen as betrayal, often punished by tribal and community sections, including being disowned, banished, or killed. The ongoing civil war and fragmented control of the country have worsened conditions for Christians who are a tiny minority and must practice their faith secretly due to hostile authorities and communities. Possession of Christian materials like Bibles can be life-threatening in Houthi-controlled areas. Many Christians live in constant fear, with a Christian house churches unable to meet openly and believers often needing to use coded communication and secret meetings to avoid detection. Basically, Christians in Yemen are subject to lethal persecution, including killings, primarily from Islamic extremist groups, and societal hostility underpinned by strict application of Sharia law and tribal customs. Christians are being killed in Nigeria, and the number of fatalities has been alarmingly high. Violent extremist groups such as Boko Haram and the Islamic State West Africa province have targeted Christian communities, especially in northern and central Nigeria, where Islamist militant violence is intense. Over the past decade and a half, more than 50,000 Christians have reportedly been killed for their faith in Nigeria, with attacks continuing regularly. Much of the violence involves brutal killings by jihadists and Fulani herdsmen militants who also burn homes and churches, displace millions of Christians, and create a climate of terror and persecution. For instance, in June of 2025, over 200 Christians were massacred by Fulani jihadists in a village in Benue State, part of the Middle Belt region, where violence against Christians has been spreading from northern Nigeria. The Nigerian government's response has been criticized as inadequate, allowing the violence and persecution to continue largely unchecked. This situation has caused a humanitarian crisis, with millions displaced and many Christian communities living in constant fear. Christians have been killed amid the recent violent conflicts in the Druze majority areas of southern Syria. The violence primarily targets the Druze community, but Christians have also suffered casualties. For example, Pastor Khalid Mazar and 11 members of his family were killed during the Syrian government forces attack on Sidawa province, a Druze majority region. This incident illustrates that while the Druze are the main focus of the violence, Christians are also the victims as government troops and other armed groups move through the area. The violence escalated between July 14th and July 18th, 2025, when Syrian government forces attempting to control the region committed numerous atrocities against Druze populations. Alongside Druze victims, some Christians have been killed in the crossfire or targeted due to sectarian motives. Overall, hundreds of Druze and Christians have reportedly been killed in ongoing clashes and attacks in southern Syria, highlighting a severe deterioration in security and sectarian violence in the region. Christians are indeed among those being killed within the Druze conflict zones in Syria, as sectarian violence affects multiple minority groups in the area. You may have noticed that you don't really hear about these topics in mainstream media. The mainstream media doesn't prominently cover the killing and persecution of Christians worldwide for several interrelated reasons. Lack of mainstream news agenda and interest. Journalists and broadcasters have shown limited concern for Christian persecution. Mainstream media often does not prioritize these stories or consider them newsworthy enough to cover regularly. Geographic and logistical challenges. Violence against Christians frequently occurs in dangerous or remote regions like the Democratic Republic of Congo, limiting reporter access and firsthand coverage. Political correctness and ideological biases. There's an argument that political correctness, concern over accusations of colonialism, and prevailing secular or progressive biases cause mainstream outlets to underreport Christian suffering as stories of Christian persecution conflict with certain Western narratives. Overlap with other regional conflicts. Christian persecution sometimes occurs amidst broader violent conflicts, which may dilute attention on religious motivations or Christian victimization specifically. Social media and niche outlets fill some gaps. Christian persecution is more widely reported by Christian charities, religious news outlets, and social media rather than mainstream secular media. So I'm asking all the Christians to see this video, to spread awareness. And if you like the video, make sure you like, comment, subscribe.